Everyone has moments in life they can't just stop thinking about. They can be embarrassing things, like that one time you face planted in front of a group of teenagers, or something amazing like the first time you hosted your family for the holidays. And on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, hosted by me, Keke Palmer, and presented by BMW, we know to savor the good memories and let go of the bad. And one thing everyone remembers fondly is their first time behind the wheel of a BMW. So come join me and BMW this summer as we explore pop culture moments and topics you just can't stop thinking about on Baby, This is Keke Palmer, sponsored by BMW, the ultimate driving machine.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room? It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th.
We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.
And welcome back to Scarred for Life, the podcast where we open up old wounds by looking back at the films that scared us as kids. I'm Terry.
And I'm Mary Beth.
In each episode, our special guest brings with them a movie that traumatized them as a child.
This week, our guest is Peter Collins Campbell. His his debut feature film, DimLand, debuted just a few weeks ago at the Chattanooga Film Festival. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yay.
I appreciate it. I don't know how to do it.
Off to a great start.
This year recorded like 7 episodes of my own podcast, and I thought I got a real good hang on it, but apparently it all goes out the fucking window when I go on someone else's.
I was going to say, it's very different being a guest on a podcast, because I was a guest on a podcast for the first time last year, and I was like, I don't know how to talk to anybody. Like, I don't know how to talk about myself.
We have the best roles right now, because all we do is ask questions and have a conversation, whereas like we got to put you on the spot.
Make you answer.
Yeah.
Speaking of putting you on the spot, how did you get introduced to horror?
So this is actually, I have listened to several episodes of your podcast, and what I have gleaned is that this might be an unusual response, but I actually, up until very recently, had almost no tie to horror.
Ooh.
Oh, really?
I literally, until Chattanooga, never even once considered DimLand to be a horror adjacent movie. In fact, this is something that I was joking about. I don't know with who, but probably on Twitter or something. But like last summer, we did these like virtual test screenings where I just like put out a Facebook ad. The film was in a slightly different cut than it is right now. And we just got like strangers to respond to a Facebook ad and like, you know, give unfiltered opinions about what they saw. And literally at least 5 people were like, when I clicked this, I thought it was a horror movie and this is like some hipster shit. And like, that's literally like verbatim what one of the responses was. And I was just
my God.
yeah, no. But then we go to Chattanooga, which is like actual fans of horror. And like a lot of people liked it, like on those terms, which was fascinating to me because I'm not really a horror guy. I like a lot of like cult films that I guess would be in the umbrella universe of horror, but like, you know, it's not something that I really was ever drawn to.
Interesting.
Wow, that's
so
fascinating.
Cool. So did you ever watch horror movies as a kid? Like, was that ever something that like you did or that you experienced at all?
I have to say no.
Wow.
That's
incredible.
I don't know if I'm
but
fucking like booted off the podcast right now.
No, but that's actually really cool because we talked to a lot. I mean, like obviously a lot of people we talked to have been horror fans forever. So it's really cool to kind of get that perspective from you though, who like didn't really grow up watching horror. And you have this cool choice today, but also here did a movie that's not necessarily like a stereotypical horror movie, but it has horror elements and it has like, anyway, it's just, yeah.
I looked at the movies you sent over about like what had been covered on your show before. And like, I thought of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom right now, or at first, because I have a distinct memory of like just being at my friend's house when I was like 8 and watching the scene where they pull the heart out of a guy. And I was like very unnerved by that. In a deep way. But I would say that The Iron Giant has an atmosphere and themes that have had an everlasting effect on my anxiety, which is something that I, as an adult, have more intensely dealt with. And I think that that maybe is a more interesting conversation point than just like, I was very freaked out by the fact that they pulled a heart out of a guy.
But valid, because it is pretty fucking creepy. I remember seeing
it's
that
fucking
scene
horrifying.
and being like, absolutely. I was like, "This, you have to turn this off, Mom." Like, and now here I am.
Body horror is like that fucks me up. I have plenty of like little weird stories about horror, but like just not really any. They all mostly are like, let's try a horror movie. And then I watch one and I'm like, I can't handle it. And then
what are some examples of those?
Well, before the pandemic, the last time that I had a panic attack was after Midsummer.
Oh my God, I had a panic attack after Midsummer.
Bad times. Great movie.
Bonding over our mutual anxiety traumas after watching Midsummer. Yes. And like, it is a great movie, but I walked out and was like, I have to throw up.
Yeah. There is something about like seeing dehumanizing on film. Like literally they're taking bodies that used to be people and like repurposing them for inhuman needs. And that as a theme is like, it just makes me, dissociate.
Yeah, and I had just been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, so that representation of the beginning of the
Not
sister,
great.
I was like, that doesn't make me feel very good about myself.
No.
I was like, that fucking sucks. And then the rest of it was just an absolute anxiety attack of a movie. And I was like, I'm not having a good time.
Nope.
Anyway.
Yeah. Good movie, though.
Yeah,
good movie.
I bought this fucking A24 special edition. Like,
see,
what's wrong with me?
I would love to own that movie on fucking 4K and like watch the director's cut, but also don't want another panic attack.
I really blame you.
I never want to watch that movie again, and I'm really excited to watch the movie again.
I know. I wish there was just some way. Maybe we could like sync it up and like take a fucking Xanax first and then watch it.
I'll just pop a couple edibles and I'll just vibe.
That would make me have the experience of the characters in the movie. So I might skip the edibles.
Fine. No, that's fine. I got that.
But yeah, I would love to try that movie again in like a safe space.
Yeah, let's hold virtual hands and watch it together again.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated. You said that you weren't really attracted to horror in most of your life. Did you stumble upon any horror movies when you were a kid, or did you pretty much stay clear of everything?
Stumble upon. I basically steered clear of anything that I was like, the point of this movie is to make me be scared.
Okay.
And mostly if I watched anything that was horror-y, it was usually by way of something that kind of like tamped it down. So like first it was discovering Tim Burton. At like 11 or something, and then just becoming a little fucking emo kid and absorbing everything that man ever did.
Yep.
And then the second wave was discovering David Lynch.
Okay.
And, David Lynch, I wouldn't call him a horror filmmaker, but like that type of fear and unsettlement is like what I am drawn to.
Okay. Yeah, because like he's not horror, but he's definitely horrifying, if that makes sense. Like it's just horrifying imagery that's very surreal. What's your favorite Lynch movie?
It depends what, like, I'll quote Twin Peaks season 3, which the line, what year is this? Just like, it depends what fucking year. I would say that, I mean, Mulholland Drive is just such a perfect like object. I mean, it deserves to be the Lynch movie with an Academy Award, I think. And the scene in that movie, the Silencio scene, is like something that I think about like a lot, and like affects me. The idea of just kind of like being cognizant in one moment of like the sheer horror of like multiple lives at the same time, somehow being able to feel that is just like an astounding thing. I'm like, it doesn't even say that in the movie that is what is going on, but somehow I get that. I get like how utterly despondent you would have to be like, I am living multiple lives in different like realities, and they're all bad. There's no escape from the all bad.
It's a lot of existential dread right there. I have to admit, I cannot say that I've seen a Lynch film except maybe Dune.
That's fascinating.
Have you ever watched Twin Peaks?
And maybe a couple episodes of Twin Peaks.
I couldn't get into it.
Wow. I couldn't get into it, Mary Beth. Oh God. Dang. It's all coming out.
The show is canceled, everybody. No more. Terry and I are no longer friends.
Hey, we've had 92 episodes. It's been a good run.
A good run.
If you like horror, then I think that I could recommend some particular David Lynch movies that are a little bit more like, I mean, Eraserhead is the original like midnight movie.
It's incredible. The movie is fucking ridiculous. And my favorite is that Bo Burnham in Inside referenced that movie and said his dick looks like the baby from Eraserhead. And I was like, I'm glad that this continues to be a culturally relevant film.
So good.
I don't even know what to say to that.
You're like, what does any of this fucking mean?
Also, an undersung, pun intended, bit from that movie is that the song by The Lady in the Radiator fucking bangs.
It does bang. There's a woman who lives behind a radiator, Terry. It's fine.
Yeah, and her cheeks look like
really
clay.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay.
It's just a fucking, great movie.
It's a great movie. It's fucking weird, but it's incredible.
So where does Dune, like, this is my only entry point to Lynch. How does Dune fit in with the rest of his
I actually love that. I love that your only entry point is Dune.
Because it's so...
That's like the inverse of every David Lynch fan.
I was a sci-fi kid and a fantasy kid growing up. So, like, I was like, Dune, yeah.
It is nothing like his rest of his movies. Like, his movies are, like, so, like... They're both grounded and make zero sense, and like this is sci-fi. Like it's just so beyond anything, and like his movies don't have big set pieces like that. Like it's more. It's
Dune has about 103% more exposition than any David Lynch movie.
Like it is the only David Lynch movie that you will fully understand, and that's saying a lot because I barely understood Dune.
Right.
And I tried to read the book. I didn't dislike the book.
I haven't even made it all the way through Dune. And it's not because I like fucking took some line in the sand and it was just like, no, this is bad. I want to love Dune, but I mean, what can you say? It's a frustrated, you can feel how frustrated he is.
Yeah.
Because some of the stuff is very David Lynch. Some of the aliens and the way that they do the atmosphere around the aliens and like the design and everything, and some of the sets and the big wide angle lenses. It's like, okay, he's trying, and then it'll like have to have a fight scene, and it's like
horrific
okay.
CGI laser discs.
Yeah, David Lynch. I mean, Twin Peaks season 3 has like After Effects level.
Oh yeah.
CGI, and that's basically where he was comfortable for the rest of his career. So boundary pushing CGI from David Lynch is not what you want.
Nah. Okay. So moving on from David Lynch, I guess, can you tell our listeners a little bit about your movie, DimLand, which could kind of fit into like a David Lynchy weird vibe? That's my transition.
Yeah, I mean, it's some weird shit. Like
that's it.
That's it. I get so tired of trying to describe the plot that I literally just default to that when I'm like talking to people that I know won't actually be too invested in the plot. But I know that's not you guys.
Well, okay, describe your movie in one word. Besides weird.
I can't do that.
Okay, fine.
No. It's DimLand is a sort of, it's a movie about a very depressed woman who is in a relationship that is kind of on its last legs, and she takes this impromptu, impulsive trip to this cabin that she used to go to as a kid that her uncle owns. She hasn't been there in years, and she gets there and she basically discovers that it is in a state of being torn down and turned into an Airbnb, but they stay there anyway, kind of out of spite, and are basically just squatting in this, half-made Airbnb. And while she's there, she rediscovers this whole other world and character that is constantly masked and wearing kind of cloaky clothes, and knows her, and sort of gets sucked into this other world that she repressed memories of, and is starting to realize she might want to return to forever. And it pushes, her relationship to even further disrepair. And yeah, that's the most fucking tangenty synopsis ever. But that is the plot.
So this movie is magical, and it's very sad and very good. And it made my heart feel both happy and sad, because it captures being our age and being kind of depressed and trying to figure out what the fuck you're doing with your life, but also wanting to be a kid again. And it really captures that vibe really well, and especially with Rue. And I love him. And I'm just curious, where'd you come up with the design? It's such a simple, it's pretty simple, but it's so effective. That mask is amazing. And so I was just curious, where the inspiration for his character and his his aesthetic came from for you.
I think it was all just subconscious ripoff of other things, which, I mean, I'm really bad at taking praise, so I'm gonna fucking deflect everything.
It's like, great, awesome.
I was listening to the last few episodes of your podcast, and I was just like, man, these guys are fucking electric. They're so good at talking the talk about their movies, and I kind of crumble under eyes, but like.
Do not perceive me. Do not perceive me.
Exactly. But like Rue was, I wrote the script. I had not visualized him really whatsoever. And then I just started like drawing. I think the first drawing of Rue I did was the the shot of Bryn with her head in Rue's lap. And it's the wide, that was like the first picture that was like created for the movie. And also was the first camera test that we did of the mask. Cool. And that was like when that like single image is like one after another was like the levels that it got to was like proving to me that the movie was gonna work maybe. Because like first it was the drawing, and the drawing kind of like said something to me. And then we did the camera test, and it was on set, and like we didn't really have any budget for like real camera tests. So we just, the day that Nate, the actor, got there to set, we like, did a test of the DimLand lighting, and we had him and Martha, who had never interacted before, just kind of like do stuff on camera. And then that worked. And then, the scene worked. So that is kind of like the central image of the film, kind of.
I love Rue. I wanted to give Rue a very giant big hug. I love the imagery, and it's so, I'm still kind of thinking about the fact that you really had no clue that there's like some horror elements to this, because even though I wouldn't say this is a full horror movie, there are some very striking images, particularly in the DimLand. And when you see kind of the truth of Rue when his mask comes off or his gloves come off, and you kind of see that there, it brought to mind a bunch of, it's very horror tangentially related, I would say. And it's very haunting. And so I'm also kind of curious, if you weren't interested in horror, were you interested in fantasy or sci-fi growing up?
Absolutely. I mean, okay. I would say like I could point to 10 different movies that I watched as a kid that are directly like influential on DimLand, even if I wasn't necessarily thinking about it at the time. And going back to the design of Rue, like it's very clearly influenced by No Face from Spirited Away. Like was
yeah.
I think Mary Beth mentioned that to me too, because I don't think I've ever seen Spirited Away, but Mary Beth is like, it reminds me of Miyazaki and stuff.
Yeah. No Face.
I did the design of Rue, and then almost immediately kind of like recognized the similarity, but I just kind of wanted to try it anyway. I think in the Discord chat for Chattanooga, someone was asking about that, and like someone brought up Dave McKean, which I was like, that's, no one had said that yet, but like that's the other big one, is like when I draw, it's just Dave McKean ripoffs. It's just like his style of like sloping nose that like is very angular in kind of like a Grecian way. And Mirror Mask was like a huge influence on me, like as a filmmaker, when I was like 16 and watching Mirror Mask and just realizing like you can make a movie that is not like a crazy art house, like no narrative movie. It can have a narrative structure, but the world that it exists in just is like paintings. Like Mirror Mask is just a 90-minute slideshow of Dave McKean digital artwork. And he made that exist as a narrative. And I was just like, in that movie also is probably the other big influence on Rue's design, which is, I forget the name, but she has a friend in the movie that always wears a mask.
It's been so long since I've seen that movie.
He's Irish.
I have never seen this movie, and it looks absolutely fucking bananas.
Oh, you would love it, Mary Beth. You would love it.
if you want to see, a bunch of great British character actors just like made up in the wackiest like costumes ever and like becoming part of, paintings, that's what it's got for you.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, I basically said to someone on the Discord, like, Rue is basically like Dave McKean redesigning No Face.
Cool.
And
that's an awesome comparison because I can see that immediately.
It was, the mask itself was like designed for the type of lighting that it was going to have. Like I, at the time, was like very obsessed with just like soft top light, just as a visual image. And I kept trying to put it in music videos. The whole idea of DimLand kind of sprouted from the fact that I just really wanted to do all these music videos where the idea was we'll have one light and we'll hang it above them, and then I'll digitally paint out the light from the shots, and then it'll just be like this traveling soft top light in like void. And no artist ever wanted to use those treatments. And I just was like, okay, fine. I'll make a 90-minute fucking music video.
I love that. Okay, you mentioned the effects, and you mentioned kind of the idea of digitally removing stuff. Did you do the effects of this, or who did the effects for this movie?
I did about 80% of the effects.
Wow.
Holy shit.
The digital creatures and creations in DimLand were all done by a friend of mine who goes by Nick Visuals. He is just this insane digital artist. He just, I think Adult Swim just showed some of his animations as like bumpers on the channel, which is like, in my eyes, the biggest achievement ever.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are always the striking things that I remember about the Adult Swim. When I used to watch it was the bumpers and stuff.
Yeah.
So cool. He's great. He did those, and then the rest of the stuff that I felt out of my depth to do was done by several friends or like art students. One art student. And some friends at a post house in New York. It was like me and then like 5 other people took on like one shot each.
Cool.
Wow.
That's incredible. So, Peter, we've talked about DimLand. We've talked about your kind of history with horror, or not so much history with horror, but what movie are we talking about today?
We're talking about one of my Letterboxd top 5s.
Hell yeah.
Which is The Iron Giant.
Hell yeah. So, okay. Iron Giant. A giant alien robot, voiced by Vin Diesel, crash lands near the small town Rockwell, Maine in 1957. Exploring the area, a local 9-year-old boy named Hogarth, which is the best name, discovers the robot and soon forms an unlikely friendship with him. When a paranoid government agent becomes determined to destroy the robot, Hogarth and beatnik Dean McKoppen must do what they can to save the misunderstood machine.
The names in this movie are just fantastic. Kent Mansley, Dean McKoppen, Hogarth Hughes. I love
Hughes is
the
incredible.
names.
So good.
Oh.
Kent Mansley works for the government.
All right, so take us back to when you saw this and give us your horror story. How old were you? What about it scared you? Tell us everything. I'm curious.
I don't remember the exact first time that I watched the movie because it came out in theaters when I was 6. When I was 6.
When were you born?
And 94.
Okay.
I'm so old. Such a refrain on this podcast, but it's true.
I was 93, so Terry is an old man.
Hey, you ever fucking hang out with like rappers that are blowing up while you are just doing like little music videos for them for like $500? They're like fucking 19 and have like 1 million followers. It's insane. So there's levels. But like I definitely did not see it in theaters, which now knowing more of the history of Iron Giant, one of my other favorite film podcasts, Blank Check, did an amazing episode on the Iron Giant. It was like fucking 2.5 hours long, and I learned so much about Brad Bird's like rise through that, and just how like Warner Brothers like canceled their own animation department while the movie was being made. So it was a total flop when it came out. So it makes sense that I didn't see it in theaters because nobody saw it in theaters.
I did.
Go on.
I mean, that's it. That's all I had to say. I cried.
Yeah.
Yeah, I cried. It became me and my stepdad's favorite movie to watch together. And it has impacted me for my entire life. We'll get to that, but Jesus.
Yes, I hope that we do, because it is, I mean, it's like a blueprint for just my fucking psyche. And like, so, okay, I don't remember the first time seeing the film, but I do remember just like many times watching it as a kid. And like, you know, because it is not a horror movie, because I wasn't like, you know, repulsed by it. And for the first like 75 minutes of the movie, it's like everything that is on screen is just like how I wanted to be as a kid. It was like, oh my God, Hogarth gets to stay home alone and watch TV? Cool. Hogarth has fucking army boots under his bed? Cool. He's got a BB gun and he knows to like fucking wrap a flashlight around it? That's like awesome.
Yeah,
and just
I love
like
that.
Hogarth was just like my 7-year-old like dream version of myself. Like he knows how to shoot. He has his own camera and he can develop film. I was just like,
what? Is
everything
that a fucking,
about it.
What? Like a black room? Like, who are you? Or dark room? Like, who are you?
He's so cool.
He's
and
amazing.
I still think he's so cool as an adult.
He is.
He's very
I love him. He's my favorite part of this movie.
Of course, now as an adult, my like icon has shifted to obviously Dean. Because now I just look at Dean's life and I'm like, well, that's what I want.
I want to live in a junkyard and make art and just like drink coffee and not have to talk to anybody.
He's so cool, and I have a crush on him.
I love him. It's funny. I was watching because I haven't seen this since I first saw it, and we'll get to that in a minute. But yes, when I watched this time, I was like, oh yeah, Dean is really cute. I love this character. I'm crushing on this man.
He's hot as fuck,
and he's voiced by Harry Connick Jr. He looks nothing
great
like
voice.
this.
I was almost about to say, and voiced by Harry Dean Stanton.
Very different vibes.
Slightly different performance.
A different vibe. Yeah, I'd love to see that take on the character, though.
I don't know, kid. This is like CoffeeZilla. He would have smoked a few more cigarettes.
So what about it actually terrified you, though?
Okay, yes, I keep tangenting.
No, I love it, though.
Okay, so for the first 75 minutes of the movie, it's like fun, Spielberg adjacent, like Kent Mansley is like a buffoon and just like, you know, scary. His like force of like potentially being very dangerous is always very clear, which is a through line in Brad Bird's villains, I think, is that like, I mean, like similarly in The Incredibles, not Frozone, what's it, Syndrome, like he's silly and like totally insecure and like a little fucking incel dude, but like he's very scary, like because of that. And similarly, Kent is like, it's funny that he's so insecure and such a square and like, you know, feels like he needs to prove himself, but it's because of that he is so unhinged. He will do anything to like win.
Well, and watching them unravel like that the whole movie too, like that, just like that, like steep decline is really scary to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he is what's wrong with America. It gets to that last, you know, 20-minute stretch, and suddenly, I mean, not suddenly, I think it sets it up very well. It's not like a hard turn or something, but like it gets into a mode of like action climax that I was not familiar with at that age, mainly just around the fact that like, okay, first you have the scene where like Hogarth is literally like interrogated and drugged by Kent.
Yep.
And you start to get this feeling of like, first there's the feeling of like forces beyond what you can control, which is the fucking US military. And he explains it in a way that like as a kid, he explains it to be scary to Hogarth, but as a kid, I'm like, he's saying we can make it very difficult for you to have like a normal life. And he's like breaking it down in this very eerie, like childlike way. And I was starting to like recognize that like, oh, there's like, it's like baby's first like Kafka-esque ideas in that movie. Just that like, oh, the system that you live in can fuck you just because they're trying to get something. So that's part one. And then there's the nuke.
Yeah, like casually that, like just going to destroy an entire town of people. Whatever. That
introduced me to like doom anxiety. And that is something that has defined my entire life. I don't blame the Iron Giant on that. I would have discovered it some other way. But like the moment where the missile goes up and then the answer is not immediately like, oh shit, well, we got to like go and do this. And it's like a race against time. Nope. Everyone just says, well, that's it.
Yep.
We're all gonna die. Like every so you've got fucking Hogarth's mom says, first the general says there's no way to survive. The army guy says there's no way to survive. His mom says, should we get to a shelter? And then Dean, his father figure, says it wouldn't make a difference. And then they just gather and wait. And I was like, what?
It's a children's movie for children.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, some of my like Hall of Fame panic attacks have been about nuclear holocaust. So like, you know,
thank you, Iron
really
Giant.
Really stuck with me.
Wow. Very existential. For sure. Absolutely. Okay. So there's a couple points that just popped in my mind as you were talking. The first one is, I love that you talk about Dean being sort of like the stand-in father figure, because what I found here when I was watching this, for this episode was this idea of the chosen family versus sort of like your biological family. Yeah. Because what I think is so insidious about Kent is the way that he kind of inserts himself into Hogarth's family as if he is a father. Right. Because the language that he uses around him all of a sudden, he's like he uses all these like pet names that father figures use for their kids, like the sport, buckaroo, slugger, tiger, buddy, ranger, champ, cowboy. He goes through a whole long litany of all these things trying to kind of ingratiate
Which is
himself.
Very funny.
I like the scene. He's like, how you doing, tiger, champ, bud, hey,
slugger,
hey.
Where you going?
But he uses those, but then he also takes on the kind of the typically in this sort of like 50s style father figure way, he takes on the punishment aspect of it, because yes, what is terrifying about the barn scene, the interrogation scene, but it's also that like, you came home late, I'm going to interrogate you about this. He acts as if he's like his paternal figure, and then he grounds him in his room at the very end, and he's like, I'm going to sit here and make sure you don't go out of your room, is very much like a grounding moment that a parent would do to a kid. So it's insidious that this is how he is and how he acts with this kid that's not his at all.
Yeah.
And it also felt like he felt weirdly privileged to his mom too. Like, and that was just really creepy vibe where he's like, I live here now. And like, I'm going to pick the hot lady and like be this figure. And you're like, where the fuck did you even come from, dude? Like, it's just so insidious.
And from like the jump, he is not outright flirting with the mom, but just it is like he feels like, yeah, like, and you know, that's probably gonna happen for me. Like
I'm a hot shot.
You know?
Like this is like a bumpkins and I'm a hot shot FBI guy, so like you're definitely gonna think I'm cool. And it's like,
yeah, he assumes everyone will think he's cool.
Yeah, and the moment when he takes off his hat and scrunches it down on Hogarth's head, he's like, go pretend to be a gangster.
Yeah,
it's just like, oh, I hate you so much. And I hate the way that you're so familiar with this family that you just literally met.
And I just noticed that there were actually like a couple things that I was surprised to notice for the first time on this viewing, because I've seen this movie like fucking, I mean, it's got to be over 40 times.
Yep.
Like, one of the things is that when he first, after the like something big, Marv, something big scene, the people that he talks to immediately before he talks to the army, I just remember like, oh, he's in an office. He's talking to like political guys or whatever. In my mind, I always thought he went back to Washington, but he's just talking to the fucking mayor of the little town and like some confused cops. And they don't know what the hell he's talking about before he ever goes to like any higher than that. And I just thought that was so funny that like he just goes straight for it, but like, you know, he's only got the people that are there. He doesn't have anyone on his side before that. And I'll save that. I'll save the other thing, but it does relate to dads.
Speaking of that scene with the mayor, I love that he's like, I need your car. And he takes off. The mayor's like, what the fuck just happened? He's like looking at like, who is this dude?
He's just an imposition on everyone around him.
So this reminds me of my favorite scene of the entire movie, which is when Hogarth puts laxatives in his sundae. And this movie like shaped, I don't know why this is like the scene I think of, but like to this very day, I'm like, yeah, that's how you use laxatives. You crumble them up and they work right away.
Yes.
Like, I swear to God, like it's such a dumb way. But like that scene made me laugh so hard. I don't know why. Probably when I was a kid and it was like funny poop humor. But for some reason, like that image is the one that I think of when I think of this movie.
There's a lot of defining images in that scene that have always stuck with me. Like just down to the fact that when Kent opens his mouth full of ice cream, his entire inner mouth is yellow. Like,
yes.
Like they just colored his whole mouth yellow, which almost seems like a mistake. Like,
well, like the way,
so
and like the way Hogarth like deviously stirs the ice cream with that look on his face, like he's just, and it just made me love Hogarth even more in that moment where he was like, I will not be fucking with you anymore, sir. Like I will. And then he like bursts out of the like when Kent bursts out of the bathroom and is like, I'm great now. And everyone's like, who the fuck is I feel like like,
but you know, 99 was a big year for laxatives because American Pie came out that year too. That was a big year.
It's a big year for laxatives. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah, huge year.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate that.
Non sequiturs.
Yeah, wow.
Here for it.
Okay, but can I talk about the moment that fucked me up as a kid? And then, Terry, I want to hear your story about the first time you saw it. So, besides the end where he says, like, you stay, I go, which makes me cry every time. The scene that really broke my heart is when he sees the deer.
Oh,
yeah.
Bambi.
Fuck.
Like, it's so, that part devastated me. Like, when I will always remember the part where he, like, touches the deer and, like, sticks a little bit to his finger and then falls down. Yeah. And he just is, like, so devastated. And you see this giant alien robot have, like, these very complex emotions, but also, like, seemingly very simple, but these complex emotions about living things. And it, like, absolutely, like, fucked me up. And, like, this realization about, like, living things and how we treat living things and how even a deer's life is precious and how, like, we're seeing through this creature, this, like, robot's eyes and his not understanding of, like, how we kill. And this very anti-gun thing in this movie about, like, violence and killing things in general. And it's just, like, it's just wrenching. And like, it's pretty early in the movie, and it just sets this whole tone of like the giant being so much more than just like a thing that fell out of the sky, not like an alien from a sci-fi movie, like the movie that Hogarth was watching with the brain coming out of the jar and like inching across the floor. Like, it just goes against that idea about like sci-fi creatures being these harmful monsters. And it's just like, this is gonna hurt.
It's also just interesting the way, like, tracking the way that one responds to the whole souls don't die scene through like aging into an adult. Because like when you're a kid, I feel like you just see that scene and like, I mean, if you're anything like Hogarth's demographic, which I was, like you just kind of go like, oh yeah, that's, you know, I recognize that speech. Like that sounds like what they say in church.
Right.
And they specifically don't say God or heaven or whatever, but, you know, he's describing obviously Christian beliefs.
Yeah.
And like, then, you know, I think at one point I like got a little older and I saw that scene. I was like, what is this? Is it like some, you know, like Christian message or whatever? And then like you get a little more, you know, older and it's like, it's obviously not a Christian theme in the movie. That makes perfect sense for what 9-year-old 50s raised Hogarth would be taught about death.
Yeah.
He's teaching another thing, death, with the only thing that he has, which is like kind of a folksy adaptation of Christian beliefs. And like, then you can kind of move on and just be like engaging with it on a purely philosophical level, which is like, you know, people talk about souls all the time. I don't know. I guess just like that's a personal sort of response to it for me because, you know, raised Catholic, lapsed, resented it. Now I'm kind of like weird, but okay. Like that's my attitude towards Catholicism.
Yes. Yep, me too.
What I love about that, though, before we move on, is that when I was doing a little bit of digging on this, that he did speak, and Brad Bird spoke in 1999 about the idea that I pitched to Warner Brothers after reading the book. When I said that I really liked it, but I wanted to do something different with it, was I said, what if a gun had a soul? And so this idea of like, you know, he is a thing that's been created to destroy potentially, but what if he could have that ability to choose because he is sentient? There's something else inside of him other than just this need to destroy. And the way that the movie kind of contrasts that with the government in this point that is supposedly trying to protect everyone, but then the government man is like, we must destroy this thing. We didn't build it. We don't know who did. It doesn't really matter. It wasn't US born. It wasn't US built. We must destroy it. And so you take those two things and you have humans talking about the only thing we can do when we see this weird thing is destroy it. And then you have this thing that was built to destroy that is like, maybe you don't have to destroy. And so there's that kind of thing there is like encapsulated, I think, in his idea of like, well, this deer had a soul. You have that ability, because he follows it up a little bit later. Like you can choose to not be a Tomo. You can choose to be Superman.
You are who you choose to be.
That line.
He says it to him when his eyes get red, and he's like, "You are who you choose to be."
Yeah. Also, just want to say, the ending of the Avengers is the ending of this movie.
Oh my God!
Which Avengers?
The first one, Tony Stark. He's like, he chooses to like fly up with what I think it's a nuke into the like Tesseract thing.
You're right.
Also,
wait, is that the
I'd
last
argue
one?
the ending of The Dark Knight Rises.
Wait, is that the last one? Like the most recent one? That was like the end.
No,
that's the first.
The
Avengers.
very first one where he's fighting against Loki, and then
oh yeah, I don't remember jack shit about that movie. Apparently.
I just always thought that was like very, very similar to the Iron Giant ending.
No, it is now that you mention it. Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Terry, I want to hear about when you first saw this movie because it sounds very nice.
So I saw this movie in like probably in my lifetime, probably like the best 2 weeks of my life. was when I saw this movie. I didn't see it on release. So it came out in 99, so it would have been 18. And I was that kind of annoying, like 18, like, animation. Because like the animation, I'll be honest, in the 90s was not for me. I mean, sure, there's some Disney things, but like it didn't really hit on the same level as some of the animation that I saw when I was a kid that I felt where it was about things, or a little bit more adult than the stuff that we were getting, the Disney-fied animation we were getting. So I never really thought about it. And in 2001, I went to a 2-week screenwriting seminar hosted by a director or a writer from UCLA, Lou Hunter. He lived in Nebraska. I think he might still live there. And that's where I lived. And so it was a 2-week seminar. I went to it, had the time of my life. It was probably the best experience, where it's like, here's this little weird kid that loves to write and doesn't really relate to a lot of people in this sort of very red part of the country. And I'm surrounded by people from all over the country that flew in to be taught by Lou Hunter. And it's like the first time that I was like around really creative people. And we were there, and I remember there's 2 guys there. I don't remember their names at all, but I remember we were hanging out and we were talking movies, and one of them was like, "Oh, have you guys seen The Iron Giant?" And I was like, "That animated movie?" And they're like, "Yeah, it's so good." And I was like, "Really?" And so we were out and about. We found it at a store. We bought it. He had this portable DVD player. So there's the 3 of us huddled around this little portable DVD player watching this movie, and then crying as it crested to the end. And it was like such this like magical moment of like watching this film as like people that were studying the craft of screenwriting, seeing how he was developing characters, seeing how things were being structured, and yet not being able to turn off our emotional center as we were like watching this. And it was such a fantastic moment in a 2-week part of my life that was like just this magical time that had like absolutely nothing to do with the real world. It was like 2 weeks outside of anything that I had to do with work or school or anything else. It was just this magical period. And that is when I saw this movie, and I hadn't seen it since then, because it was such this like perfect moment until last night when I watched it for this podcast.
Wow.
That's
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah, so I hold this movie. This movie is very special to me because of that.
Oh, this movie is so incredible. Oh my God.
Also, just in terms of like watching it as like a piece of not animation, but filmmaking, one of the most maddeningly perfect scripts.
Oh, it's so good.
That is one of the tightest scripts I have like ever seen. Like I was just thinking last night while watching it, like, this is a movie, and I think that a lot of Brad Bird's movies are like this, is like, this doesn't strictly need to be animated. Like, this could very easily be just a live action movie, but I'm so fucking glad that it is animated.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the animation is so goddamn beautiful in this movie.
Beautiful. All the woods and like just everything about like it, like Rockwell made it looks like I feel like it feels like a Norman Rockwell painting at times, like the backgrounds and just like that 1950s small town vibe is captured so well, both from like this Cold War anxiety, but also just like the diner that they all hang out at, and like when he's home alone watching the black and white movie and just like stuffing Twinkies with more whipped cream and just like shoving them in his mouth, and it just has a very good
opening
vibe. Yes. Oh, the opening, sci-fi, like heavy,
the sci-fi vibe, and then that view of the meteor hurtling through this giant twisting storm, and then we get the raging sea. That sea is beautifully animated, and it's just like the way that unfolds, where it's like the fisherman sees the lights and he thinks it's the light, the lighthouse, and then it turns and it's this imposing, forbidding, almost terrifying thing that's staring down on him. It's so well crafted, and it's such a perfect opening that immediately, like, I remember immediately like going, oh, this is something different than I was expecting when I first saw it. And it just hooks you immediately in the story and then whisks you off on this like this fable, and it's so good.
Also, like the voice direction in it is so like naturalistic. I feel like right now we're in like an animation period where, and this is not a negative, but that like we're in a period where a lot of animation is intentionally trying to get people to not sound like voice actors. And like, I think a lot of it is maybe Bob's Burgers like influencing this, because, you know, it's been like a decade since that came out. And I think that a lot of animation is doing a similar kind of just like, this literally just sounds like a person just kind of like mumbling and talking, which is great. But like this was 20 years before that. And like everyone is just talking. They're just like acting. They're not doing voices, and they have lines, but like sometimes it's like they're like stumbling on each other's lines and people are like muttering things, and it's just so natural. And I feel like Brad Bird has got to be some kind of amazing voice director, just because, you know, he's got all these actors that are actors, not voice actors. They're like film actors, and they're delivering film performances.
Yeah. Well, and I think that has a lot to do with how I feel about like how this movie navigates tone so well, because you have that really like kind of scary sci-fi beginning, and then you have that scary kind of like, you have that setup of the town, and then you have this scary reveal for Hogarth, but then you have these beautiful tender moments of them like doing cannonballs in the lake, and like the squirrels in his pants, and like all these
love that scene.
Like these really cute scenes that make it all the more endearing. It's not just like a sci-fi movie about a robot. Like it's a movie about a kid growing up and finding friendship through, again, like we talked about, found family. And it's just so sweet. And it makes it all the more sad and heartbreaking and emotional, because you really do, like, Brad Bird makes you really fall in love with all these characters. Like, you really care about Hogarth. You really care about the Iron Giant. You really care about Dean. Like, everyone is just so lovable and weird. Like, a little weird, but just, like, so genuine. Like, they don't feel like cartoon characters. They feel like genuine people. And that feeling makes it all the more impactful and effective.
Yeah. Dean is, like, not a beatnik archetype. He's a person who was a beatnik in the 50s. And like, you know, you look around his house and like he likes shit that someone who was into beatnik culture would just like. He's got a little Kerouac poster in the back and
love that. That little.
Speaking of stuff in the back, there is a detail that I noticed on this watch in Hogarth's room that I had never ever noticed before. And I think it is the only reference to his dad in the entire movie. And it doesn't like change anything, but it does. I think this is amazing. So when he looks at the clock one time, I think when he's waiting up all night, you see a picture next to the clock of like it's a black and white photo of a man getting into like a biplane. And it's clearly his dad, who was a pilot. And then you're just like, oh shit, his dad was a pilot and died in the war. Yeah. And like, then you start thinking about, oh, he has that helmet. He has that like goggles, like flying helmet.
Oh shit.
And then you start realizing this character has like this huge hole in his life. You can see all of the echoes of his dad on his whole life. And they never talk about it in the movie. And that's so fucking incredible.
I didn't even realize that, but it makes perfect sense.
Took me 20 years to realize it.
Well, it actually makes, it makes Mansley even more insidious, because here is the government coming in trying to fill the hole of the person that probably died in the war for the government. And Mansley is this, on the surface, so patriotic person, like, right? He's doing all this stuff for the government. And then by the end of the movie, he's like, screw the country. I want to live. And so there's like this false sense of patriotism that comes out of this character that is a government man that, again, probably took the father from him. I didn't even think about that. That makes it even grosser.
Yeah.
Wow.
Holy shit.
Yeah, man.
Oh. Okay. Wow. Okay, so the other thing that really struck out to me this time, kind of like taking this into more joyous territory potentially, is this is a movie for the outsiders.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say this is a queer movie, but it definitely, as someone who is queer, you can kind of feel that this movie is for you in a way, because like when Dean is first introduced, he is looked down upon by the townspeople. Like they compare him, the fisherman comes running in, he's like, oh, I saw this. And he's like, oh, you were drunk. And then Dean tries to stand up for him and they're like, yeah, well, this guy over here, they compare him to this drunken man is like this negative. And then when he tells Hogarth, he's like, oh, I didn't see anything. He's like, but if we don't stand up for the kooks, who will? And so it's like this idea of like standing out for that outsider. And then later on when Hogarth says like, you are who you choose to be, you choose, you have that, you have Dean that his like, he loves jazz music. He loves to create art out of junk. He loves like, his thing is not about production that this town obviously is all about. This idea of like the fishermen and doing all the stuff that is about that sort of blue collar or, industrial type stuff. He is creating art and he wants to do that, and people look down on him weird. So that aspect of it with the chosen family aspect just like really like hit home for me this viewing.
I think that's totally fair. There's another line where the giant wants to come, he is running full speed towards the town, and Hogarth stops him and he says like, you can't go there. They just aren't ready for you yet.
Oh yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Like, damn. I think that it is just one of those beautiful allegorical things that you can apply to so many universal feelings. I don't really know if Brad Bird was like thinking about half the things that I, apply to this movie. Like, I don't even know if Brad Bird is really anti-gun. But
actually, because Terry, you wrote this quote down, and I wanted to make sure we brought that up.
I did find that at a 2016 Comic-Con, he was talking about his sister Susan, who I love very much, was very close to, died of gun violence. Pointlessly, she was killed by her husband. I was devastated. When you shoot somebody, you're not just killing that person, you're killing a part of all the people that love that person. And so that was like the inspiration for this movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
He is a weird guy because sometimes his views kind of lean almost like conservative. Yeah. And like a little like, well, everyone is always arguing about like whether his shit is like Randian or not. But like, this is the one movie that kind of escapes that because it really is not about any of that. But like his later movies, like The Incredibles and Ratatouille and everything, like everyone is always talking about, do you really think that like, there are just like some special people and they deserve to be like better than everyone else or what?
I love Ratatouille.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, so
great movie.
It is a great movie.
Ratatouille. A great movie.
I've been really trying to stop myself from talking about The Incredibles because I think it is like such a partner movie to this film. But
it really is. I mean, you can see like the DNA that goes through both those films. But the other thing is that, so we have that inspiring Brad Bird to make this movie. But then I was also looking about, because this is based on a Ted Hughes novel that he wrote, The Iron Man, which they, changed later because of the Iron Man. Right. And that's why it wasn't called the Iron Man. But reportedly, Ted Hughes wrote this in the wake of his wife, Sylvia Plath's suicide, and he wrote it to comfort his kids.
Jesus
So you have this book that was born out of tragedy of Sylvia Plath's suicide. You have Brad Bird making this movie out of the pointless death of his sister. So there's like, this movie is all about kind of trying to find some kind of solace and some kind of hope in a very tragic world.
Is everyone okay?
Clearly.
Like, are we okay? Like, we love this movie. Like, it's obviously so, like, are we all collectively okay? No, the answer is no.
Clearly
absolutely
not.
Fucking not. From like from the ground up, from both the writer of the original book to us now, no one is okay in the experience of this thing.
I had no idea about that, about the original book. I remember picking that book up as a kid. I found it in my library in Sacramento, and I like remember looking through the book and going, oh wow, this is so weird. This is nothing like that movie that I love. But I don't remember I remember that the plot has nothing to do with like the military and stuff. And
no, there's like some kind of space dragon, I think, that he ends up fighting.
Hell yeah.
What?
I would like.
Wow.
That's what I read when I was like looking at Wikipedia. I was like trying to find because I've never read it. And it sounded like there was a space dragon.
Okay.
Sounds cool.
I mean, like that sounds kind of rad.
Oh, I have a question for you guys after you finish, Terry.
Oh, no, I actually had a question for you guys. So you start.
Did you watch the original version, or the one with the 2 additional scenes like in there?
I've seen both.
Whatever is on Hulu is the one that I saw recently, and I'm not 100% sure.
Did it have a scene where the giant has a nightmare?
No.
Okay. Well, that's good
that
because I watched a version that has these additional scenes kind of like stuck in there, and I don't like it.
Why? Because they're upsetting, or because they're not as good?
Well, first of all, they were animated fucking 15 years after the original, so they look bad and like digital. They look like they were animated digitally with like digital cell animation, and the original, one of the defining things about it is how hand-drawn it looks. Seeing the like HD transfer of this and like looking up close and being able to see the pencil lines was just like, I love that. But like there's these 2 additional scenes on the like re-release of this. One of them is like was included on the original DVD as just a deleted scene called like the Giant's Nightmare or something. And it's like it shows a snippet of his backstory.
Oh.
And I don't really think that is necessary at all.
No.
And then there's another scene, there's only one other, but like it's a scene very early in the movie where Dean is at the diner and Hogarth's mom is at the diner, and they start to like flirt a little bit. And I just don't think that's like, we get it. They're both fucking hot and like 35. Come on.
We understand.
Of course they end up together. I never questioned that.
It's Harry Connick Jr. and Jennifer Aniston. Hello.
Yep.
Hello.
Yeah. It's like unquestioned.
Well, and I also think about you mentioning the dream and sort of getting his little bit of backstory. That's unnecessary because
totally
this movie uses everyone's knowledge of sci-fi in order to tell the story.
Yeah.
With the way that the fisherman comes running up and he's like saying, he first says maybe it's Sputnik, and then he's like, oh, maybe it's an invader from Mars, maybe it came from outer space. Like he's dropping sci-fi movie names, right?
Yeah.
And then when the Iron Giant takes on his like destructive form, you have the tripods coming out of him, and it's obviously referencing War of the Worlds. So like you have this imagery. It doesn't really matter. You don't need to know anything else other than he is the pinnacle of what sci-fi movies say we should be afraid of in the 50s, and it's proving that he's not, that we shouldn't fear him. And so you don't need anything else.
Kent says it best. He's like, I don't know where he came from. The Russians, the Chinese, I don't care. Like,
all he knows, we didn't build it, and
care.
That's reason enough to assume we need to destroy it. Like,
he is other. He is other.
So my question is, because I was thinking about this time when I was watching this film, is so this movie is obviously it's set in the 50s, and there's that one video teaching the kids about the atomic bomb where it's a song and they hide under the desk. And the image that I remember that is clearly out of everything else that is stuck in my head for 20 years is a scene of the kid, the animated kid hiding under his desk where everything else around him is obliterated, but that desk is magical. And the way that it satirizes that notion of how we try to placate kids and placate public by saying, oh, if you go in these shelters, oh, if you go under this desk, you'll be okay. And I was thinking about this because I grew up in Alaska when my first like 8 to 10 years of my life where there's earthquakes. And I remember going to school and we would have like videos about earthquake drills, and we would hide under a desk, and that was going to protect us. And yes, an earthquake is not an atomic bomb, but I was thinking again about how, I'm wondering, did you guys ever have any like school drills where you had to like hide under a desk or anything like that?
I definitely did. Do you have anything you want to Mary Beth?
We had school shooting drills, which was pretty traumatic.
That's what I was.
Yeah, we had those that were really scary. We had a couple tornado drills because like we randomly would get tornadoes here. I grew up in Maryland, on the East Coast. But yeah, we did bomb drills because we had a bomb threat once, and so they started doing bomb drills at my middle school because we got a fucking bomb threat. But yeah, it was more like the horrors of which people act rather than natural disasters. So like the vibe of that like atomic bomb isn't as dramatic, but still like the kind of man-made, human-propelled horrific stuff that could happen.
I definitely like also I have some very early memories in my elementary school in Sacramento of like school shooter drills. I believe we also did have a bomb threat one time. And I remember thinking about this movie. I remember thinking, and I was just like, so does that do anything or no? And then I moved to the Midwest and I experienced tornado drills.
Yep.
And like, it's the same shit. So it's just like you are a kid and, you know, you see the movie and then you have all these drills where everyone's solution is hide under a desk still.
Yep.
And it's like, guys, what if this is all bullshit, like you're saying? And that is
with the atomic bomb, it's like, it's not going to not go under the desk. Like
it's such a great comically like image of satire because of
by
that.
The way, it's not even satire. If you guys I've looked up these videos on YouTube and there's no exaggeration. That is what they are. They're animated. They do songs and it's about hiding under a desk so you can protect yourself from the atomic bomb.
It's wild. It's wild.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, I mean, I grew up in the Midwest too. After we moved out of Alaska and we moved to Nebraska, and we would hide for tornado drills in the hallways. Like we would be just lined up in the hallways. Yeah. I guess to be away from the windows. But I'm like, dude, if the tornado comes through here, it ain't gonna matter. Right.
Those tornado drills were like. That was another step on my journey of doom anxiety because I just like, it's like you just sit there and wait for maybe disaster to happen. And that is something that has never had a great reaction from me.
Nope. And I have really bad OCD, so intrusive thoughts are really not great when these things happen. Yeah. And all I can think about is like, my family's dying, I am dead, tornado is coming, we're all going to die.
Yeah. It's really fun.
It is. It's great. It's great to exist.
Which is a feeling that this movie gives you, though, too. On top of like the hopefulness, there are moments of like, well, everyone's dead.
It's wild.
Yeah. And I've always just like felt a I don't know. I feel like Brad Bird gets me on some level that he's just like, I want to make a big family blockbuster and it's all going to be about dread of the end of the world. And like,
it's going to be cute and also fucking heartbreaking.
Yeah. I'll bring this conversation up to you guys when I make my next movie because it's even more inspired by that feeling than DimLand is.
Yay! Woo! On that note, is there anything else we want to talk about with The Iron Giant, or do we want to give us our rating out of 5?
I mean, do you guys want to just throw it on and maybe just watch it again?
Yeah, let's do it.
I do want to do a shout out to, I love the little sci-fi movie that
oh my god, it's Hogarth so watches.
Good. The scientist speaking in that monotone.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
Oh, it's so good.
I seem to have forgot my keys in the lab.
Yes. Or that, darn, what a waste of a good brain.
Or like the fact when he's like, how about a nightcap? Say, my place. And Hogarth like knows enough to know what that means.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, and he does. Like, I love it. I love it.
It's such a good moment. It's like another one of those moments I always think about when I think of this movie. One, because I wanted to put whipped cream in my extra whipped cream in the Twinkie.
Thank you.
Like so badly wanted extra whipped cream in my Twinkies.
I was so devastated as a kid when I like saw the movie. I was like, oh wow, there's holes in those Twinkies. Interesting. You can like put more whipped cream. And then I went out and I got Twinkies. I made my parents get Twinkies, which they did not want to do. And then I opened them up and was like, where's the holes? There's no holes in these Twinkies. I can't do this to be like Hogarth.
Why can't I be like Hogarth?
Yeah, that's all I wanted.
But like him just like
Anyway.
it's also all I like seriously, I was like, I want to be left home alone with junk food. Like, why is my mom always around? Like being mad that my parents were around to like take care of me.
Yes. Absolutely.
And he's like cozied up under the blankets watching the movie, and like it sets that really like that tone of when you're left home alone for the first time and you're like really excited but also scared. And
Mom's
my
like,
best life.
Don't eat snacks, don't watch horror movies, go to bed early. And he's like, sure.
Yep.
And he's all above, like Twinkies with the whipped cream. And such a great moment.
I just wanted to be a latchkey kid. God damn it.
All I wanted to do was be a latchkey kid. Damn it, Mom!
Why did you and Dad have to stay together? And why did you have to have no side job for the first 10 years of my life? Anyway.
Well, on that note, shall we give this phenomenal movie our rating out of 5?
Heck yeah, we should.
All right, Terry, how many laxative sundaes out of 5 do you give the Iron Giant?
There's no beating around the bush. This is 5 delicious laxative sundaes. That is a day and a half probably of being in the bathroom, but I'm going to snarf all 5 of those down because this movie's fantastic. I was worried watching it when you had suggested watch this movie because I had such a perfect memory of this film when I first saw it. And I've, like I said, not seen it in 20 years. It was the summer of 2001. And I know that because we also went to go see Tomb Raider and we tore that movie apart. So we went from watching Tomb Raider in the movie theaters and tearing that as being snotty, like script nerds apart to go and watch this movie and just be like utterly reduced to tears. And so I was afraid of rewatching this movie, but no, it stands the test of time. This movie is perfect. You mentioned, Peter, that the script is just, you can't get any better than a script. It is 87 minutes, and it like feels like it tackles so many different themes in such a short runtime, and it never overstays its welcome. This movie is perfect. What about you, Mary Beth?
I will also give this movie 5 laxative sundaes out of 5. This movie is perfect. It has been absolutely formative to me. I think about it all the time. This movie is just like, it's so important to me, but also my family. Like, it's our family movie. My stepdad and I have a couple like movies we always watch together and talk about, and this is one of them. And like, my stepdad is my father figure in my life, and so I get those emotions sometimes when thinking about like found family and father figures who aren't necessarily like biologically related to you. So that movie really brought us together, and that's like one of the huge reasons why I love this movie. But it just was formative and has just shaped me as a person in such an amazing way, in ways that I didn't really think about until I watched it again. I was like, this movie really is like one of the most important movies of all time for me. And so it's perfect. All right, Peter, I think I know what your rating is going to be, but you have the final word. How many laxative sundaes? Okay.
As a baseline, 5 out of 5. I'd also like to add 5 out of 5 overstuffed Twinkies.
Yes.
5 out of 5 junkyard cars.
5 out of 5 cups of espresso.
Nukes.
Cups of espresso.
Yes. Cups of espresso. 5 out of 5 nukes. 5 out of 5 BB guns. Fucking, this movie is just like, everything you said, fully agree with. I think it was probably like 4 or 5 years ago that I like reckoned with just how high I hold this movie. And like revisited it and just realized like, you know, like you said, Terry, like there is no diminishing returns. Like this is not just like a nostalgia movie. This is like an actual like incredible piece of cinema that like I think now probably is being regarded as such, but like it did take a really long time.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
It's just, it's one of the best movies of the last 20 years. Or, well, I guess more than, it's 99.
20.
So
Last
20?
30 years. Let's just say last 30 years. Keep it safe.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
What an incredible movie.
I'm so jealous that you were 18 in a year where you could go see like The Matrix and Fight Club
I'm
and The
telling
Iron
you.
Giant.
99, best year for cinema, hands
It
down.
seriously is an absolutely incredible fucking year.
I mean,
for cinema.
you want comedic dramas. You have Magnolia. You have American Beauty. You have
American
Matrix.
Beauty,
you
Jesus.
have Fight Club. You
Let's
have
next that one, but
it's just a perfect
it's fine.
year.
It is a perfect year.
Oh, I loved it when I was 18. I was so enamored with
sure.
that movie.
When you're 18, you're
100%.
like, oh, this is art.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, it really
I was so pretentious at that time too. That was my first screenplay that I ever bought, and I would study it like
That
it
tracks.
was like that one in Magnolia. The first two purchases from Amazon actually,
Wow.
and both screenplays. Yep,
What a fucking nerd. I'm just kidding.
that was me.
Yeah.
Pretentious film nerd back in
You
when
are
I was
the
18.
problem.
Yeah,
Buying the American Beauty screenplay off Amazon.
Yeah.
Who'd
Hey,
have thunk that would have been anything that anyone would have a problem with back in 99? American
Yep.
Beauty? What? We love Kevin Spacey. Have you heard of
Right?
Amazon? It's great.
you can get any book that you want from Amazon. That was like the big
Seems like
thing
a great
for me.
service.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for joining us to talk about this beautiful, perfect movie, The Iron Giant. Where can us
Thank you
find
so
you?
much.
What do you have coming up? And when do you have any idea when other people can watch DimLand again?
So, I do. I can't say yet.
Okay.
And if I can, I don't know if I can. So
Okay.
Gotcha.
I'll tell you guys after the thingy. But so DimLand will be in at least 2 more fests over the next 2 months. We're going to be in Woods Hole Film Festival, and I don't know when this is coming out. We may already have, but and then we're going to be in Fort Myers Beach Film Festival. Also waiting on like 50 other festivals to say anything right now. So hopefully a couple more. And then there will be a substantial amount of viewing options come in the fall.
Hell yeah. Oh, that's so exciting.
Beautiful.
Cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Oh, and where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram. It's the only social media that I've been able to keep track of whatsoever. I'm at PCC Films on Instagram. You can also find DimLand on Instagram at DimLand Movie or dimlandmovie.com. And yeah, we got a fucking newsletter that I update semi-regularly. And yeah, I don't know if I'll ever go back to it, but I did have a podcast mini-series for a little while this year called Something Something Double Feature. And it was me curating a season of double features that all link thematically. It was a lot of fun. It got me through quarantine towards the end, and was a nice project to have. I have like 3 more episodes recorded, so maybe I'll edit them sometime. But yeah, that, exists. There's like 6 episodes people can check out.
Cool.
And I am working on a second feature called The Moon in America. And if anyone wants to just send a couple $100,000 to my PayPal, you may. It's petercampbellfilms@gmail.com. And any amount is fine.
Cool.
So that's
Beautiful.
We'll plug that in the show notes.
Heck yeah, we will.
great. Not joking. Please send me several $100,000 for
Not
that
joking
movie.
either. We will put that in the show notes, listeners.
So listeners, you've heard from us, but we want to hear from you. What was your experience with The Iron Giant? You can send us an email at scarredforlifepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach out to us directly on Twitter. I am at MB McAndrews.
And I'm a Gaily Dreadful.
And of course, don't forget to follow the podcast on Twitter at Scarred Podcast.
And please don't forget to review, rate, and subscribe.
Thank you to Eric Power for our artwork. Thank you to Sean Keller for our music. Thank you everyone for listening. Please stay safe out there, but most importantly, stay creepy.
And until next time.
Won't somebody please think of the children? Oh.
As a person with a very deep voice, I'm hired all the time for advertising campaigns. But a deep voice doesn't sell B2B, and advertising on the wrong platform doesn't sell B2B either. That's why if you're a B2B marketer, you should use LinkedIn ads. LinkedIn has the targeting capabilities to help you reach the world's largest professional audience. That's right, over 70 million decision makers all in one place. All the big wigs, then medium wigs, also small wigs who are on the path to becoming big wigs. Okay, that's enough about wigs. LinkedIn ads allows you to focus on getting your B2B message to the right people. So, does that mean you should use ads on LinkedIn instead of hiring me, the man with the deepest voice in the world? Yes. Yes, it does. Get started today and see why LinkedIn is the place to be to be. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Acast powers the world's best podcasts. Here's a show that we recommend.
What is The Briefing Room?
It's a behind-the-scenes look at how the criminal justice system works and the lives of the people within that system.
If you love true crime, well, these are the real people who do the job every day of making sure justice is served.
Hi, I'm Detective Dave.
I'm Detective Dan. Together, we have decades of experience in local law enforcement, a profession that we think is often misunderstood.
So we're going to explore how to do it right, and we won't shy away from when it's done wrong. These are stories you'll hear nowhere else. Unique, frank, and unvarnished.
From the team that brought you Small Town Dicks, this is The Briefing Room. Episode 1 drops on August 30th. We'll meet you in the briefing room.
Acast helps creators launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts everywhere. Acast.com.